Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Hawkeye season 1. Let's talk about it. So Hawkeye season 1 just wrapped, and that marks the end of the 5th and final Marvel Disney Plus series of the year. You know, Marvel has been incredibly busy this year, pumping out content after content after content, most likely to make up for the lack of content entirely in 2020. But boy, boy have we feasted on Marvel content this year between the Disney Plus shows and the movies. Like, we are full, okay? Marvel has fed us well, but here we have the very end of its run in 2021 with Hawkeye, a series that focuses on the more unlikely hero in the original Avengers lineup, the kind of forgotten hero, okay, very underrated because of how human he is, but that also opens him up to a lot of potential to explore his story and his journey, especially in this post-blip world. So super exciting stuff that is explored throughout this series that we're going to be going through in this review, because I do want to do a couple of reviews to kind of wrap up the year before I start off with my best of the year videos. This is like an annual tradition on my channel where I do some best of the year videos, so best TV shows of the year and best movies of the year, and those will likely be coming up next week, so I'm preparing for those. And by preparing, I mean watching a bunch of stuff watching a bunch of stuff that I missed out on earlier, but there are a few things that I did just want to discuss before those come around so that we can end the year nicely. And Hawkeye season 1 is most definitely one of those things, even though this is the only Marvel Disney Plus series that I didn't do weekly reviews on because I was just so tired. One, I've just been so tired, and two, the series, you know, the series wasn't giving weekly review energy, honestly, and we'll discuss this in a second. But before we get into my thoughts on the show, just last but certainly not least, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now, with all of that being said, let's discuss Hawkeye. I just wanted to start off things with the kind of concept of this series. Like I said, I think it's really interesting that through these Disney Plus shows, we've been able to shine a spotlight on some more unlikely characters that have been seen as, you know, kind of sidemen. Really, like the sidemen, okay, they're not the main course, okay, but they're the nice side dishes. And because of just how complex and huge in scale the main MCU movies have become, we no longer have the time to explore these kind of side characters in any real depth. So it makes sense that they would be, you know, thrown onto Disney Plus, given a reasonable budget, and we can explore their stories in a more personal and intimate way, whilst also getting a look at different corners of the MCU to keep it fresh and keep it interesting. And I do think that Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, was a perfect candidate for this. He was, of course, one of the OG original 6 Avengers, right from 2012, so it was definitely overdue for him to have a spotlight shone on him, even though he's the only one of the original Avengers who didn't end up getting a movie, but rather a series. And he kind of had to share the spotlight even still with a new Hawkeye in the form of Hailee Steinfeld's Kate Bishop. But I'll start off by saying that these two work so well together. I was so surprised to see how natural the chemistry was between the two characters, although I shouldn't have been surprised, because honestly, Hailee Steinfeld has chemistry with everyone. Hailee Steinfeld has great chemistry with everyone. She's just great in general. I did watch Dickinson season 4, by the way, for those who are curious, and she's just great in that series as well. She's just consistently excellent. But yeah, they have great chemistry together. I love the juxtaposition between the characters. The fact that Clint Barton is this very world-weary, hardened ex-SHIELD agent who's been through it all, seen some stuff, been through some stuff, okay? And then you have this Kate Bishop who's like peppy and optimistic heroic and she wants to be a hero. She feels like she has the skills, you know, the talent, but also the drive and the motivation to do some good in the world. And she just wants to prove that to her hero who saved her life, you know, inadvertently. And so I like this combination a lot. I feel like they really sell the show and they're the heart of the show. And I liked seeing their relationship grow throughout the series, seeing how Clint takes on this mentorship of Kate, showing her the way, showing her the tricks, sometimes literally in the form of the trick arrows, which I loved. Okay, they're a bit quirky, a bit corny, but I love them. They're so much fun. But I really enjoyed seeing this kind of adaptation of the Matt Fraction run from the comics being brought to the small screen through this series and seeing this new relationship develop. I will say though, something that I was kind of pondering on the other day, where I was kind of going through all of the MCU stuff that's been coming out lately, there does seem to be a trend that I wish I had noticed sooner. Maybe you guys have already noticed and you're like, Jean, like you're only just seeing this. But I feel like there has been a trend, a very intentional move to push these kind of duos, these diverse duos, as I'm putting it, where basically you have two characters, likely one of them is a white male still. Okay, likely, it's still Hollywood. Likely one of them is a white male, but the second character adds some flavor. The second character adds some diversity. We saw this with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We saw this with Ant-Man and the Wasp. We saw this with WandaVision, of course, with Loki. And now we've seen this with Hawkeye as well. Like, they seem to be pushing these duos where either, you know, one of the characters is a female or one of the characters is a person of color, just something. And then we are also going to be seeing this with, you know, Thor Love and Thunder with the inclusion of Jane, and also Doctor Strange has Wanda being featured quite heavily as well. So they seem to be abandoning this idea of just like the single white male lead and trying to incorporate some more diversity in the form of these like duos, like I said, these diverse duos, which is interesting. It's an interesting way of incorporating diversity in the MCU. Now that I see it, it's kind of obvious. Now that I see it, it's glaringly obvious. But I do think, you know, it means a lot to fans around the world to see themselves be represented in this world. And so if that's the way that they're going to go about it, then, you know, that's great. That's fine. We're also going to be seeing this, I was just thinking, and we're also going to be seeing this in The Marvels as well, which is the sequel to Captain Marvel, where we're going to be getting 3, you know, female leads in that instance, but 2 of them are women of color. So that is an interesting move that Marvel is making. They have years and years to make up for the lack of diversity. So I think it's a, you know, I think it's a welcome change. But now that I see it, it's like hard to miss. I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing there. But hopefully if these characters are well developed and they're well liked by fans, then it won't matter. People will just, you know, adopt them as their favorites either way. Now, going back to Hawkeye for a second here, another thing that I really enjoyed about this series was the festive background. The fact that it is actually set during the festive season. I thought that was really fun. I think it was a nice touch for the series and kind of set it apart from the rest of the shows in the MCU Disney Plus universe. So that was a really fun element to it, especially with the Rogers the Musical being featured here, and that end credits. The end credits at the end of the finale episode. Like, I kept waiting for there to be a twist, but no, it was just the performance. It was just the performance of Rogers the Musical, and honestly, like, I kind of loved it. It was a catchy song, okay? Like, I could do this all day. Hilarious, but also excellent. So yeah, I like the fact that this was set during Christmas. And also I'd like to point out, I believe in my review of episode 1 and 2, if I can remember, I did predict that the end would have Kate going to Clint's house and, you know, hanging out with the Barton family for Christmas because her mum was locked up somewhere. I think I said that. I might have cut that out in the final kind of cut of the video, but I was right. I was right, because that's exactly what happened, and that put a smile to my face. Okay, so now we're going to be diving into the story a little bit more. I've already established that I really enjoy the 2 main leads, the heroes of this series, but I will say one of the issues that this series has is that the story was far too crowded, considering it was just a 6-episode series that had like 40-minute episodes, not even the full hour for each of these episodes. And first of all, I will say that one of the reasons why I didn't end up doing weekly reviews as I had planned is because some of these episodes that dropped dropped, like episode, I think it was 3 and 5 maybe, they were kind of lacking, like, not gonna lie, like, it was like, what more can I say? Like, honestly, they didn't feel like great standalone episodes on their own. A lot of them were just like pretty good episodes with like a bombastic ending. Like, for example, episode 5, like, I can't remember what happened in episode 5, if I'm being honest, apart from the very end where we got that reveal of the KINGPIN. So I feel like there wasn't a lot to discuss when it came to each of these episodes, and the fact that I was already tired and I was already looking to 2022 when the series was coming out didn't help. And that is surprising considering what I also just said, which is that there are so many different storylines at play here that it actually feels quite crowded as a series. So like, what's going on here? I feel like the series could have benefited from cutting down a couple of the storylines, namely the Yelena storyline. I love the fact that Yelena was in the show. I loved her interactions with Kate Bishop and even Clint Barton when she stopped trying to kill him. But I didn't love the story. I didn't love the reason why she was there. We saw at the end of Black Widow in the end credit scene that she's told that Clint was the reason why Natasha died. I don't know how these people knew that. Like, I don't know, like, they weren't on Vormir. I don't know how they know that. But so she goes after him, and it turns out that she was actually hired by Kate's mum to go after him as well, which compounded the issue, only to find out that her sister had died because she had sacrificed herself for the greater good. And again, Clint's explanation isn't explicit. He's like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you, but like, she chose to do this. And Yelena ends up just taking his word for it anyway. So I'm just like, what's the point of this whole storyline? It was a bit bizarre. Considering the fact that Yelena is this like established Black Widow, you would think that she would do the proper research, and if she came up with inconclusive information, because the whole thing took place on Vormir, then she wouldn't pursue Clint Barton for like no apparent reason. It would be too dangerous for her. But anyways, so that storyline was a little bit odd to me. It felt a little bit forced. And also the reveal in episode something, is it episode 4 or something? I can't remember. Basically the episode where she's revealed to be the kind of surprise appearance in the series during the fight sequence on the roof. That was a pretty cool fight sequence, by the way. The fight sequences in this show are decent, especially when it comes to the trick arrows and the stuff that they do with that, because it's a very unique Hawkeye feature. So I like the fact that they emphasize that in the series. But anyways, that reveal that she was going to be in it didn't really shock, you know, many of us, because we already were aware that she was going to be making an appearance. You know, all of these leaks and rumors have kind of started to ruin things a little bit when it comes to the upcoming projects in the MCU, and I'm trying to avoid them more and more, because I do genuinely want to be surprised, and I do want to experience these things firsthand for the first time without thinking like, oh yeah, I already knew this is going to be happening months ago. Like, it just spoils things. But either way, it was spoiled and I knew that she was going to be popping up, so I wasn't wholly surprised by her appearance in the series. And like I said, whilst I think that Florence Pugh is excellent as Yelena, I mentioned this in my Black Widow movie review where I said she was one of the best parts of the movie. I think she's great as this character. I'm so excited that she's in the MCU alongside Haley Steinfeld, and sure, I would love to see her in a Young Avengers, but here the storyline, it wasn't strong, and we could have cut that one, especially because there's so much going on already. Another storyline that we could have cut out, in my opinion, is the conflict between Echo and her assistant, or her former assistant. I guess they needed her to interact with someone in the gang, and so the guy that was like her interpreter, he kind of had these secrets, and he was more involved than he let on with the top boss, okay, with KINGPIN himself. And so, you know, when she asked him about the events that surrounded her father's death, he's like lying and being cagey. And again, I feel like that's just for the purposes of having her be involved in the story and interact with someone that isn't Clint Barton, because she can't really speak to him. But that whole kind of betrayal storyline was a little bit like, take it or leave it. And frankly, I would leave it, because like I said, we have very few episodes to work with and so many different storylines. Now, speaking of the KINGPIN, another storyline that I have some conflicting views about is that surrounding him existing in this series. Okay, first of all, to be clear, First of all, to be clear, I think the Kingpin is one of the best MCU villains ever. That's not a novel thoughts though. That's just common sense. Like, that's like me saying I think the sky is blue. Well, yeah, it is. Duh, like, of course, okay. The Kingpin is iconic. Like, Vincent D'Onofrio as the Kingpin, please. There have been so many different MCU villains up until this point, and like, we know what the top tier ones are. We know which ones are the creme de la creme. So the fact that he was in the series, of course, was going to be a big deal. But a part of me wasn't as excited as some people were, because I was like, if I see the Kingpin return in my ideal world, in my ideal scenario, it would be in a Daredevil season 4 series. It would be in a Daredevil season 4 series. That's the only time where I would be like literally like delighted, ecstatic to see the Kingpin return. Because frankly, I don't think that the Hawkeye series, as great as it was, like, bravo, great work, but I don't think the Hawkeye series deserved him. Oh, I said it. I don't think that they deserved him. And imagine my anger then. Imagine my anger and frustration then when they killed him off, allegedly, because we never see the gunshot wound. Okay, so allegedly, and we never even see her shoot the Kingpin, so it's done behind the scenes. So there's a possibility that he's still alive. He lived through a lot, okay, in that last episode, so there's a possibility. But either way, I don't think that the series deserved him. Like, I think, like I said, the Kingpin is an incredible villain, and the only time that would have really just made me so excited, so ecstatic to see him return in an MCU proper series or project would be in a Daredevil season 4. That's what I want. Or in the next like Spider-Man film. That's what I think Kingpin is deserving of, something like next level. Whereas this, as cute and fun as it was, it wasn't quite on his level, 1, and 2, it wasted him. His appearance in the finale wasn't great. First of all, I hated the way he was dressed. I hated the costuming for the character. I don't know if it's a callback to the comics or something. Like, why was he wearing this red and white Hawaiian shirt with this white suit? Like, the Kingpin in the Daredevil series is wearing dark clothes all the time. He's very menacing. He has this menacing presence. Whereas here, he's wearing a fedora. I don't understand. I don't understand. Okay, hated that. Secondly, you know, this series didn't do enough to establish just how complex and dark and menacing and terrifying this character is. He is terrifying. I mean, it definitely showed how physically imposing he is, and the fact that he's very difficult to kill even when you try to run him over with a whole SUV. But it didn't establish the same mental, same psychological complexity of the character that Daredevil did. And that's to be expected, because Daredevil 1 had 13 episodes a season and 2 had 3 seasons, so like fair. But then why waste, like, why do it at all? And also, why try to kill him off in the end? Are you kidding? If you're not going to do a great job with him, give him to someone else. So yeah, I feel like having the Kingpin in the Hawkeye series helped the Hawkeye series more than it helped the Kingpin character. And I think it was kind of beneath him, especially considering how they treated him at the very end. Like I said, very physically imposing, but otherwise he was just any old gangster. And if it wasn't for the context of the 3 seasons of Daredevil that we know and love, I don't think the character would have come across as quite as powerful as he did. And since we're already on the topic of villains, let's go ahead and run through some of my thoughts on the villains in this slate. First of all, we have Maya, aka Echo. I think she's an exceptional character, and I can't wait to see more of her in her own Disney Plus series. I think that was a phenomenal entrance for the character. The fact that we're starting to see, again, you know, beating a dead horse here, but more diversity, not just in the form of racial or ethnic diversity, although that's also there too, but also with the representation of people with disabilities, like this character who is deaf, and of course Clint Barton himself as well is hard of hearing. So yeah, I think that is a really great inclusion to have in this landscape of many characters that the MCU currently holds. And I think Maya is an excellent addition just all around. You know, the fact that she does have this kind of power to her, this kind of influence to her. You know, not everyone pops out in these Disney Plus shows, okay? Not all of the female characters make a great impression on me as a female viewer. Sylvie. Okay, for example, Sylvie, who I strongly disliked, but Maya's my girl. I'm a fan of her, okay? So she's definitely in the good side. Bad side, though, would be her assistant. As I said before, I don't see his relevance other than for her to have someone to communicate to. So I guess he's relevant there. But then he also had the audacity to fight against Clint Barton, and the whole time I was like, didn't he fight against Thanos? Like, Clint... It's so weird seeing this guy who's like so low level, street level criminal, not even one of the smartest of the smart, quite frankly, and he's fighting against Clint Barton, who's like an Avenger. Like, what's going on here? I think that's one of the issues with the series overall, is that these villains just feel so low level for an Avenger. And I know that Clint Barton is technically like the lowest of the Avengers, but surely like even Spider-Man would like slot in there, you know, just be more in line with this kind of street level threat, as opposed to, you know, Clint, who's supposed to be one of the top dog, whatever. You know, it's fine, I guess. A guy fighting another guy is basically what's happening here. But yeah, no, he was in the bad pile. And then you have the Tracksuit Mafia. They were cute, but I didn't expect to see more of them after episode 2, if I'm being honest. They were like cute, like, you know, Russian stereotypes, but I didn't expect to see more of them. Are you kidding me? I was like, hang on, they're sticking around. Why? Why are they still here? So yeah, I wish we had disposed of them very early on in the series. But again, this is only 6 episodes. So like, who else do you introduce in the meantime? But they were, again, very low level for a supposed Avenger to be dealing with. Like, not even. Like, that's like a cakewalk. And also that kind of storyline surrounding the watch that they were trying to steal at the auction in episode 1 or 2. That kind of fell flat to me. That was just like a situation. It seems to be some kind of watch that, you know, Laura owned, because apparently she may have been a SHIELD agent in her previous life before she became Clint Barton's wife. Like, imagine that. She had a life before she married Clint Barton and had his children. Like, whoa, that's so shocking. Like, of course she's a SHIELD agent. Like, we could have assumed that anyway. That's not the big reveal that the show thinks it is. Anyway, so that's what the watch was kind of surrounding. It had details about her life, I'm guessing, and like, I guess I'm somewhat curious, but not enough for that to be a huge kind of plot twist at the very end. But yeah, so the Tracksuit Mafia, bad pile. And by the way, this bad pile is getting bigger and bigger, because the MCU villains this year just weren't it. A lot of these, like 90% of these villains just weren't it. Okay, the villain in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, who was that, like the Flag Smashers, boo. The villain in WandaVision was actually Wanda, but the series won't acknowledge that, so Agatha has to be the villain, even though she didn't really do anything, boo. The villain in Loki, okay, now that's different. He's like the 10% that worked. He's the 10% that worked. There were some very good villains in What If, okay, but some of them were also boo. So far, the Phase 4 villains aren't giving what they're supposed to be giving. And like I said, introducing Kingpin was kind of a cheat because he was properly established in another series. So they don't get to get credit for that one. So in the meantime, we just have the Tracksuit Mafia, and they're another boo to add to the pile. And also, actually, another villain in this series that was more under the radar ended up being Kate's mother. Now, I called this in my previous review. I said that something was up with her and that you wouldn't hire Vera Farmiga just to play like an ordinary mum character. Something needed to be going on below the surface. But honestly, that's kind of what they did. That's kind of what they hired Vera to play, basically an ordinary mum character. Like, I feel cheated. I mean, sure, she ends up being an accomplice of the Kingpin, but as I already established, like, the Kingpin is a big deal because of the Daredevil series, not because of anything that's established in this series, so they don't get credit for that. And in terms of like her involvement in these criminal activities, they were very much underplayed. Like, I kept expecting a big reveal where she was like evil and she was up to no good and doing all kinds of stuff, puppeteering, you know, the underground evil world or whatever. But in reality, she she was like, oh, I was backed into a corner after your father died and he had acquired a bunch of debt and left me in a bunch of trouble, and so I ended up owing the Kingpin and I was forced into this. I was just like, oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted her to be evil. Like, I wanted her to be interesting and for there to be a conflict between, you know, Kate's morals and the, you know, moral compass that she has and upholds, especially after seeing Clint save her life in the Chitauri invasion, you know, versus her mother's morals. Something aligned with what we saw in The Runaways, for instance, but done better. So yeah, that's what I was expecting, but that was kind of disappointing in the end, even though I did appreciate the fact that Kate actually upheld her morals and stood her ground and reported her mother, and she's carted off in a police van at the very end there. I think that was very touching and emotionally resonant, and also true to the character, and actually gave that story arc some meaning. But overall, when it comes to my thoughts on this series, I had a really fun time with it. I thought it was a very enjoyable entry into my TV show schedule from the past 5 weeks. I really enjoyed the entry of Kate Bishop, played by Hailee Steinfeld, into the MCU proper, and as much as I was disappointed by how they handled Kingpin, I was still really happy to see Vincent D'Onofrio reprise the role and therefore confirm that the, you know, Marvel Netflix series are very much firmly within the MCU. I think that was really important, and we saw that with, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home and Matt Murdock making an appearance there, but then having the Kingpin in this series is kind of just concrete evidence that we're living in the same universe up until this point, at least. And I really enjoyed Jeremy Renner reprising his role as Clint Barton, the kind of reluctant mentor that he plays, and then he finally establishes this great working relationship with Kate, and of course Pizza Dog. I love Pizza Dog. Okay, he's always a star. But yeah, and then at the very end there, where they have that family dinner, I think it's just the perfect ending. And like I said, I saw it coming, but even still, it was very touching and moving, and it was lovely to see the series be set during this festive time. So I had a really fun time with it. But still, I would say that as much as I enjoyed the series, if I'm being honest, it wasn't exceptional. Like, it didn't blow my mind. I wouldn't say that it's one of the best series of the year, which is a spoiler for my best TV shows of the year video from next week. But yeah, I just thought it was a really fun time. I really enjoyed this entry into the MCU Disney Plus lineup, and I wouldn't be surprised if they greenlit a season 2 that largely focused on Kate Bishop and her journey to becoming a young Avenger, because that is inevitable. And so with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving Hawkeye the series a 7.5 out of 10. And before I end off here, a couple of months ago I did do a video ranking all of the MCU series that had been released up until that point. So that was WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki. I hadn't yet seen What If, and then of course we have Hawkeye at the very end. I thought I would just quickly give you guys my rankings for 2021. So at the top, of course, as I established in that previous video, we would have Loki. That was my favorite MCU Disney Plus series of the year. And then second to that would be Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I know many people prefer WandaVision, but that series isn't really one that I have gone back to much, although I may do so ahead of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Third up would be WandaVision, a strong third, because it is a great series. And this is where I struggle. I would say, I think What If was very uneven. I think there were episodes of What If that were really great, and then some that were kind of disappointing, whereas Hawkeye was consistently pretty good. So I'm going to give it to Hawkeye. I'm going to say Hawkeye is at number 4, and then What If is at number 5. Now, keep in mind that all of these series have been a blast. They have been so enjoyable. I've loved watching every single one of them, you know, looking forward to them on a weekly basis, and I feel so spoiled being able to see all of this Marvel content this year. It's just been great as a Marvel fan. So yeah, I love all of them, but to give them a proper ranking, that would be my order. But that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Hawkeye the series, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of the show down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.